Is Stannis the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms? He certainly thinks so, but is he right? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. Did you know that I have a second channel, IDG Live, where I do regular live streams as well as more content on A Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings and more? It would be great to see you there. There's a link in the description. Let's start with the obvious. Stannis believes that he is the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. His reasoning for this is clear and straightforward. Robert Baratheon, his elder brother, died without any true-born children, so he was next in line. For him and for many, it's an open and shut case. As he says, we do not choose our destinies, yet we must do our duty. No, great or small, we must do our duty. But of course, the War of the Five Kings showed that not everyone agrees. So let's play devil's advocate and try to understand why some people may dispute this. Stannis' case clearly rests on the assertion that Robert's children with Cersei, Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen aren't actually his, and the children that are clearly his, Edric Storm, Mia Stone, Gendry and so on, are not legitimised, and most aren't even recognised. But although we can be sure that Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen are Jaime's, we've seen from both his and Cersei's POV, no one else in the Seven Kingdoms has this advantage. Accusations of illegitimacy aimed at the heir are actually quite commonplace in Westeros. Aegon the Conqueror's children were under suspicion in his time, Rhaenyra's children, Aegon IV's, the list goes on. If Cersei asserted their legitimacy and King Robert never doubted it, that was enough for many people. Other than hair colour and scurrilous rumour, there was no actual evidence to prove otherwise. And we do have to acknowledge that King Robert did insist that Joffrey was his heir right up to his dying breath, and even dictated a royal proclamation from his deathbed to that effect. However right we might think Ned was to ignore Robert's wishes in this, not writing Joffrey's name in there and not telling Robert because he didn't want to sour his friend's last few moments with such a massive and painful truth as his wife's infidelity. However much we might be on Ned's side, Stannis' claim is not based on what King Robert wanted, it's based on what we assume he would have wanted had he known the truth. We'll never know for sure what Robert would have done if Ned had actually told him. Bad things to Cersei, I have no doubt, and Joffrey wouldn't be heir anymore, but would he name Stannis his heir? It's not certain. Everyone works on the assumption that he is next in line in the succession, but can we say for sure that he wouldn't have, might say, legitimised Edric Storm instead, or trusted his best friend Ned to choose the next king, or any one of 100 different things? We know Robert never really liked Stannis all that much. Can we be sure he would leave the throne to him? It's not 100%. So already it's clear that although Stannis has a strong case on the basis of him being Robert's brother, it isn't watertight. And even the closest thing we have to a legal document here, Robert's will that Ned changed, doesn't explicitly name Stannis the heir. Ned simply changed the words, my son Joffrey, with my heir. But let's go back one step further, because Stannis' claim above all else rests on Robert Baratheon being the true king of Westeros, and not everyone accepts that. He took the throne by force, remember, and after the fact the Maesters justified it, at least partly, on the grounds that he was part Targaryen himself. His and Stannis' grandmother was Rhaelle Targaryen, daughter to King Aegon V and aunt to the Mad King himself. Of course, if you accept that as grounds for the Baratheons' legitimacy to rule, then you have to acknowledge that there are potentially other Targaryens who also have claims. Aerys II's daughter Daenerys, for example. And in A Dance with Dragons we meet someone claiming to be Rhaegar Targaryen's son Aegon. And then of course we have all the possibilities around Jon Snow. I'm sure Stannis would argue that when his brother won the Iron Throne, he set up a new royal dynasty, House Baratheon, so their claims are nullified, but some would inevitably disagree. At which point you may say, let's be honest, Robert's claim and therefore Stannis' claim is not based on their bloodline, but by right of conquest. Robert won the Iron Throne in battle, so it is his. Which is fine, but if you accept that it's possible to legitimately win or lose the Iron Throne by force, then by implication you have to accept that as it stands in the story, the Lannisters have now won the Iron Throne by force themselves in Joffrey's name and kept it in Tommen's. Stannis tried to assert his claim by attacking King's Landing and was beaten. Furthermore, Stannis has lost his seat of Dragonstone, and rumour has it his family's ancestral home of Storm's End. His expedition to the north now also hangs in the balance. Truthfully, Stannis can't even claim to be king of the Seven Kingdoms based on popular acclamation. The Lannister-Tyrell alliance is recognised by much of the land. The Iron Islands have declared independence. Doran Martell is actively trying to get a Targaryen on the throne. The Vale of Arryn has stayed neutral, and the north is all over the place at the moment. So where does all that leave us? If you hold that Robert Baratheon was the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms and the Targaryens are now out of the running, that if he knew the truth, Robert would have stuck with Stannis as his heir as per usual Westerosi inheritance rules, and that Stannis' inability to claim the throne by force so far doesn't undermine his claim, then yes, Stannis is the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, or at least those parts that still recognise the Iron Throne. If you don't believe all those things, then he isn't. Which perhaps answers the question, but I think there are two important things to note here. The first is that Westeros is not like a modern liberal democracy with transparent constitution. It's a quasi-feudal society with an absolute ruler. Yes, there are inheritance conventions, but when it comes to who is king or queen, those rules are more often ignored than followed. Aegon the Conqueror created the Seven Kingdoms by conquest. Maegor claimed the throne by force. Jaehaerys' supporters ignored the named heir and installed him instead. Rhaenyra and Aegon II fought the Dance of the Dragons over differing interpretations of who should inherit, and so on and so on. This is nothing new. Asking whether Stannis is the rightful king is actually rather missing the point. Lots of people think that they are the rightful king or queen. The person history will remember as the rightful king is whoever ends up on the winning side. Aenys I's eldest son Aegon had a pretty clear claim to succeed his father and was even proclaimed king by his mother, but was remembered as Aegon the Uncrowned because Maegor took the throne for himself by force. He isn't in the official line of rulers, regardless of how strong his claim was. So that's the first point. History won't remember whether Stannis was ever the true king or had a moral right to the crown, whatever that means. It will remember whether he actually triumphed. The second point is a more literary one. One of the key distinctives of George R.R. Martin's writing of A Song of Ice and Fire is how he cares far less about the truth of something than whether someone believes it. That is often what drives the plot forward. For example, whether Tyrion turns out to be the Valonqar from Maggie the Frog's prophecy matters less than the fact that Cersei believes it to be the case. It is her belief that is driving that part of the story forward, rather than a clear-headed assessment of whether she might be right. In this case, whether Stannis is actually the true king matters less than the fact that he believes fundamentally that he is. It is his belief that is driving the action forward, rather than any objective assessment of whether his claim is valid. It is an absolutely valid reading of A Song of Ice and Fire to view Stannis as the rightful king who had the throne stolen from him, and it's a wonderful twist to have him ardently seek to redress that injustice, not because of a particular desire to be king for its own sake, but out of a sense of duty. Because he thinks he is king, it is his duty and honour to fight to make that a reality. That makes for a much more interesting dynamic than simply wanting power just because he wants power. And I will say this, of all the people currently vying to rule the Seven Kingdoms, there's a case to be made that Stannis is the one who is stepping up to actually do what a ruler of the Seven Kingdoms ought to be doing, particularly in the light of the revelations in Season 1 of House of the Dragon. We found out there that Aegon the Conqueror and his successors held on to a prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire, that they needed to rule in order to save the continent and all humanity from the threat from the White Walkers. A terrible winter gusting out of the distant north, absolute darkness riding on those winds, and whatever dwells within will destroy the world of the living. When Maester Aemon wrote to the 5 kings begging their aid and warning them of an impending threat from the north, only Stannis responded, abandoning his home and any immediate plans to take the Iron Throne to do what he thought a king should do. As he says, "Lord Seaworth is a man of humble birth, but he reminded me of my duty, when all I could think of was my rights. I had the cart before the horse," Davos said. "I was trying to win the throne to save the kingdom, when I should have been trying to save the kingdom to win the throne." Stannis, unlike any of the others, is trying to save the 7 kingdoms from an existential threat, like a king should. Perhaps that matters more than discussions about whether he is the true king. In this, at least, he's acting like a true king. A king hardly anyone recognises as king, but a king nonetheless. If you'd like to see more videos digging deep into the world of Ice and Fire, please check out the playlist appearing now on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.